I get asked from time to time to produce a bottom 10 following my top 25 release each and every Sunday, to do a bottom 10, kind of poking fun at not necessarily just the worst teams in college football, but some of those teams that are well underachieving. And, this school has been struggling in its football program for quite some time, but we're going to talk some Rice football because I try to cover everyone, try to get to everyone, and am intrigued by the take on Rice. And as I look down the list of scores, it is far from embarrassing despite the overall 0-6 record. We got Steve Helwick on the line from SB Nation and Underdog Dynasty, where he covers Rice football. Steve, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing excellent. And yes, do not be deceived by that 0-6 record in Rice. There's only 3 teams in college football that can't claim a win this year. One of them is New Mexico State, one of them is Akron, and the other one is Rice. Now, New Mexico State and Akron have lost to teams. New Mexico State's lost to New Mexico. Akron's lost to UMass, the same UMass team that got clobbered by an FCS team. But Rice's losses, they're pretty respectable.
They are.
Head coach Mike Bloomgren says he doesn't want any moral victories and he hates being close. But his team has finished within one possession of a top 25 team this year in Baylor. They were one possession away and I think 29 yards away from getting a touchdown to tie up Army, although he would not have tied it up. He said he would have gone for the 2-point conversion and gone for the win. Now, that sounds a little wild when you think that that's that same Army team that was a made field goal away from beating Michigan in the Big House. So the Rice Owls team has really made strides this year. You're not going to notice it by the record. That's something you can only notice if you've really been watching this team. Head coach Mike Bloomgren, he came from Stanford, and he's trying to bring Stanford over to Texas. So he's implemented a lot of Stanford's pro-style offense within Rice. Rice plays with fullbacks. They play with tight ends. They shotgun. They don't run shotgun as much as most teams in their spread offenses now. They play under center a lot. They play a traditional style game. So far, their offense has been pretty conservative this year. They've grounded the ball quite a bit. They have a very good offensive line with a lot of transfers, including center Brian Chafin, who came directly from Stanford and started a lot of games with the Cardinal. He's been paving the way for a good running game this year, led by Aston Walter, who's really broken out in CUSA play. He's had 2 100-yard games so far against Louisiana Tech and UAB to start Conference USA play for the Owls, but the Owls just haven't been able to break through for that first win yet. And I think the reason that they haven't really got there yet is they haven't really established a passing offense yet. They have quarterbacks Wiley Green and Tom Stewart. Tom Stewart's a grad transfer from Harvard, and Wiley Green is labeled as a freshman and got some starts at the end of last year. But they really haven't taken many shots downfield. The majority of their passes are screens, and opening up the offense through passing has been a difficulty for Rice so far this year. But on the other hand, the team has an excellent defense. I don't think you'll find this many good front sevens in the Conference USA or in the group of 5 as you'll find in Rice, because the Owls really limited Army's triple option attack for a lot of this year. They shut out Baylor in the second half. Baylor entered that game with the top scoring offense in the country, and they shut them out in the second half. That looks really impressive when you consider what Baylor did in Manhattan last week to Kansas State, and Baylor beating Iowa State a week before that. So seeing what Rice has done on the defensive side of the ball, it's all promise, but it hasn't come to fruition yet. But when UTSA is the next team on the schedule, that win's probably going to come eventually. And Mike Bloomgren has just made major strides at Rice. And tough non-conference schedule is the only reason the country hasn't noticed yet.
Yeah, I'm not kidding when I say it's impressive. As you mentioned, a one-score loss to Army. They held the Cadets to 14 points. Wake Forest wins 41-21, but it was 14-all at one point, only 24-14 at half against a Wake Forest team that's still undefeated, ranked in the top 15 to 20 in the country. Of course, Texas is a top 10 or 12 team loaded with talent. They lose that by 35, but you mentioned the Baylor game, 21-13 against Baylor. And 23-20 against Louisiana Tech. They were right there to win that game. UAB's coming off a Conference USA championship, won that 35-20, so a pretty respectable score. Usually when you see a team's 0-6, it's 45-10 every week.
I know. because they really should have beat that Louisiana Tech team. They were up 14-7 for the majority of the game. The defense kind of let up in the second half, and the offense scored on the first 2 possessions, which is rare for Rice this season because usually it's the defense which is carrying the Owls. But that game, it was the offense kind of stalled in the second half after starting out really strong, and they didn't score a touchdown for the rest of the game, and Rice was limited to field goals, and Louisiana Tech won on a Jamar Smith run in overtime. UAB, it was 21-20. The Blazers were up at the half, but the issue was the game actually took about 6 hours and 15 minutes, I think. It was delayed that badly due to the weather. It was finishing around the same time as Washington-Stanford last Saturday because of all the lightning in Birmingham, but Rice just kept fumbling in the bad conditions in the second half, and that really prevented the Owls from getting back in the game offensively. But even the Texas performance is impressive. The game was in Houston at NRG Stadium, home of the Texans, but you play a top, I think they're 11 right now, top 11 team, and you still score 13 in garbage time. There's a top 25 team right now, Cincinnati, that couldn't even score a single point against Ohio State. So anytime you can put up points against Texas and get a few offensive drives going, no matter what time in the game it is, it's still not a bad result for a team that's just in a rebuild stage right now.
We're covering Rice here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. That should be reason to like, comment, share the videos, and subscribe. Steve Helwick doing a great job of covering the group of 5, the MAC included, Hustle Belt, Underdog Dynasty. Please join him and the rest of the staffs there on SB Nation. Steve, we appreciate you stopping by, getting us caught up on Rice.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Go back to App State, Louisiana, watching